BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And today is September 27th. This is an important day in the Zodiac calendar. This is the anniversary of the Lake Berryessa stabbing that saw the murder of Cecelia and Shepard and the attack on Brian Hartnell. Brian Hartnell would go on to survive. Cecelia and Shepard would survive for 2 more days, but she would pass away from her injuries in the hospital. So, as we begin, it's important to remember the life of Cecelia and Shepard and, recognize her humanity. But she would play an integral role in this mystery because Cecelia and Shepard is the Zodiac killer victim who saw the Zodiac without his hood on as he was approaching the Lake Berryessa crime scene. Lake Berryessa is an incident in Zodiac killer activity that is quite different. I mean, when I was first learning about this stuff, I just could not believe that the Zodiac killer only wore that hooded costume one time. And in many ways, that's one of the reasons why I believe that Lake Berryessa is the most infamous incident in Zodiac activity. There are a lot of illustrations and depictions of the Zodiac killer wearing that black hood with the clip-on sunglasses and the Zodiac symbol on the piece of fabric that is hanging down. And you might see the famous Robert Graysmith original illustration of the Zodiac holding a gun as he is approaching Brian Hartnell and Cecelia and Shepard. But of course, the Zodiac would holster the gun and then stab them. The only time that the Zodiac killer stabbed the victims in the confirmed incidents. And the other thing about this is, I think the timeline is very telling about Lake Berryessa. It feels like an eternity ago since we were talking about the murder of Darlene Ferrin on the 4th of July, and we did an upload called The Murder of Darlene Ferrin. It'll be available in the description box here. The best way you can support this channel is just by listening to some more of our content. That's all you got to do. And it feels like double eternity since we were talking about the 51st anniversary of Lake Herman Road back in December. So I think that is very important to note because, number one, we can say that the Zodiac was much more about writing the letters and the cryptograms like the ciphers, mailing the 340 in November, but first mailing the 408 at the end of July. I believe the 408 cipher was mailed on July 31st, and then the 340 is mailed in just about the second week of November. Was that the 9th thereabouts? And then you would have the all of the info in between, all of the things that are going on. The Zodiac is taunting the police, and this is what really happened with the Zodiac killer. The letters and the cryptograms. That's the reason why people are creating this image of this boogeyman in the dark, this terrible figure that is just lurking around lovers' lanes. And if you listen to the documentaries, they will talk like that. He terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area from Napa to Vallejo. You will hear things like that, and the big reason is the Zodiac was very much about reputation, image, sending these things to the newspapers as well as taunting the police. But also, the other important fact about the timeline is it really gives a lot of room for planning, unpredictable thinking. And if we're going to entertain various theories on the Zodiac killer mystery, it appears that the amount of time that somebody would have had to think about what they're going to do next is monumental. I mean, like I said, it's been ages since our upload on Lake Herman Road for the 51st anniversary, and it wasn't until mid-2019 that I saw a comment in the comment section here on Black Box Online Radio when someone mentioned something about the 50th anniversary of all the incidents in Zodiac killer activity in 1969, and we did do things last year for the 50th anniversary of the murder of Cecelia and Shepard and Paul Stein. We did the transcript reading of Lake Berryessa, which is available here on this channel, as well as a memorial for Paul Stein on the 50th anniversary. But, I guess I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. 1969 to 2019 was 50 years, half a century. And a lot of the questions in the Zodiac killer mystery are still very much unanswered. They're very foggy. And we really do not have all the questions solved. But the other point is that if we're going to talk about Lake Berryessa, let's look at some of the other differences. I mean, this is the only crime that happened in September. It's also the only crime that happened during the daytime. For example, Lake Herman Road at night. Blue Rock Springs at night. The Paul Stein murder in Presidio Heights in October, that was at night. Lake Berryessa happened during the daylight. The Zodiac is wearing the hood. The Zodiac stabbed the victims. The Zodiac tied the victims up and had a full conversation with them. It's possible that the Zodiac killer was talking to Paul Stein in the taxicab, but we don't necessarily know. What we can say is that Lake Berryessa has an enormous amount of differences. Now, what could be some of the reasons for this? Somebody left a very interesting comment on the channel once when they were asking just me the question about what do I think about this, and of course the answer is I'm not quite sure, but let's explore it a little bit when they said, do you think that the Zodiac killer wanted one or two of the victims to survive the Lake Berryessa stabbing? Because we really have to look at, were the victims meant to survive? Like, was the Zodiac stabbing them but knew that the wounds wouldn't be lethal? Why would he want them to live? To give the descriptions of the hood, to give the descriptions of the Zodiac symbol and all of the things that they had experienced, to talk about how he's rambling on about Deer Lodge Prison in Montana, which I believe was absolute baloney. The Zodiac had a conversation with Brian Hartnell, and he said, I escaped from Deer Lodge Prison in Montana. I'm en route to Mexico. I just want your car and money and such. But I think that was all phony baloney. He was just saying things to get a desired result, as well as to instill fear in the two victims so that they would go along with his actions. But that's another variant of trying to get a desired result from them. And also, Brian Hartnell was much taller than the figure in the hood, whoever the Zodiac killer was. So he would have viewed Brian Hartnell as an intimidating figure, and he wants him to comply. But bear in mind, the Zodiac was holding a gun. And Brian Hartnell did talk about this in the documentary, This is the Zodiac Speaking, saying that he's saying some things to Cecelia and Shepard. He's whispering to Cecelia, and he's saying, like, should I make a go for it? And people were discussing this in one of our Q&A sessions when they were asking, do you think that Brian Hartnell's demeanor and his presence there is rather bizarre? And, like, he doesn't seem scared. He's like, should I make a go for the gun? And I was like, no, I don't think that that's weird at all. I mean, especially when we follow other true crime cases. I was listening to an episode of the I Survived podcast, and on that one, a woman was attacked by a man, and like he cut her across the hand, and he's holding a knife to her throat, and she's just saying, hey, you just cut my hand. Do you mind if I reach into my backpack and get a Band-Aid? And the guy was so caught off guard by her calm and casual demeanor. And she said she's on fire in the inside. She's really panicking. It just doesn't show. Some people respond to these types of very intense situations in a different way. And as we said, though, Brian Hartnell did want to make a go for the gun. He wanted to try to grab the gun because he perhaps thought that he could overpower the individual in the hood, or at least get the gun out of his hand, and then he would gain control of the situation. But as Brian Hartnell said, and This is the Zodiac Speaking, he was willing to take a gamble with his life. But Cecelia said very clearly in the Lake Berryessa transcript, just do what he says. She was not willing to take that risk, and Brian thought that he would not want to jeopardize her life because of an endeavor that he would like to pull like that. But a lot of the questions about Lake Berryessa are still unanswered for the following reason. We are still trying to figure out what were the motivations for all of these crimes. And on this channel over the last 9 months, we've had a lot of discussions about the influences from literature, comic books, as well as some of the other works of art and musicals like The Mikado. And a lot of people are sharing the ideas that the Zodiac killer seems like a guy who was either acting out fantasies from all of these things, literature, the musicals, comic books, books of various sorts, The Most Dangerous Animal of All even, the film Bloodlust from 1961. He's acting out fantasies from these things showing, hey, I can be a real-life character from these works of art. Or he is thinking that I could be a better killer than the people in these movies or the characters in these comic books, and he's trying to bring that to life. There could be a few motivations for that. But what I would say about that, the Lake Berryessa stabbing, where the Zodiac is wearing this hood and he is attacking the victims in broad daylight, I mean, if anything, that would be a clear example of somebody that would be doing something like that. And I did like the comment that somebody left. I mean, I forget where I heard this one, or else I would cite the person who came up with this, but it's not my own original observation. They said that it appears that the Zodiac is almost acting like these four crimes that happened within a 12-month span, mind you, from 1968 to 1969, December of 1968 to October 11th of 69, and even the conclusion of the 340 cipher in November of 69. It's almost as if the Zodiac was acting out a play, like these are the four acts of a play, and then you have the hood at Lake Berryessa. It's significant to the Zodiac, but if he was genuinely trying to murder Brian Hartnell and Cecelia and Shepard, they wouldn't have been able to talk about the costume. And that's why somebody asked that question. And I think it's a good question. I mean, I would have no way of knowing, was the Zodiac trying to leave one or both of the victims alive to give descriptions of the Zodiac killer costume. What I can say is that Brian Hartnell was stabbed 7 times, Cecelia and Shepard was stabbed 10 times, and either this person knew exactly what they were doing, but like if someone who was a novice at killing people, as we said, the only time the Zodiac killer is completely confirmed of stabbing the victims, I don't know how he would have been able to stab somebody 7 times and know that they had a high chance of surviving. I mean, unless he was a surgeon, but I just don't believe that, if I can be very frank and very honest. And right now what I would like to do is go over to an old upload that we did on Lake Berryessa, and I would like to look at some of the comments that you guys have left here. First, and I would like to give a shout out to Mike M, who has written something here on an old Lake Berryessa upload that we did. About Lake Berryessa, let's pretend that Brian Hartnell died that day. We would not have this ridiculous description of a guy in a costume bearing a Zodiac symbol. The first thing I would like to say about that is that we do have the door at Lake Berryessa. This is another unique thing about Lake Berryessa, where the Zodiac symbol was written on Brian Hartnell's car door. It was a Carmen Ghia that he purchased from a showroom in Oregon, and the Zodiac wrote the symbol on the car door and wrote the dates of Zodiac activity. But with Lake Berryessa, he didn't write the numbers for the month. He wrote September, S-E-P-T. He wrote the letters for that date. Is there a significant reason for that, or was that just the lapse of judgment? I'm not necessarily sure, but that is another big difference about Lake Berryessa. The Zodiac certainly wasn't writing the dates of activity on the Paul Stein taxi cab. He was trying to get away from that, and not at Blue Rock Springs or Lake Herman Road either. After all, if you're going to kill people, you don't need a disguise. About the writing on the car door, the newspapers had published the letters and anyone could copy this writing. Most importantly, the so-called Zodiac killer claimed to have committed the Lake Berryessa knifing. Oh, excuse me. The so-called Zodiac killer never claimed to have committed the Lake Berryessa knifing, which is strange for a guy that sought attention. Now, I'm just going off of memory here, but I believe there is one possible allusion to the Lake Berryessa stabbing in a letter, but I'm getting a little bit, I can't even tell you the specifics of that, but I believe it says something in an area, and people are just assuming that the Zodiac was talking about Lake Berryessa. But we should say that about copying the handwriting and the symbol. That symbol, the circle with the cross going through it that you're looking at now, it was published August 4th, 1969 in the Vallejo Times-Herald. Also, somebody could have been practicing their handwriting. Somebody could have been, well, just even familiar with the symbol. And I've said, though, about comparing the Zodiac letters to the car door at Lake Berryessa. Was it the same person? Well, the problem with that is, I've said this before, and I don't mean to be too repetitive. Take a pen and write your name on a piece of paper, printing all the letters, and then pick up a marker, write your name 5 times as large on a metallic surface, and it looks different, does it not? I mean, like, it's not, I wouldn't expect it to be 100% the same, but thereabouts in the ballpark. I mean, as for the reasons why the Zodiac killer chose to do these things, I'm not 100% sure. I definitely can expect that they could have significance, but we always have to bear in mind that the Zodiac killer was such a troll confessing to crimes that he didn't commit, talking about this thing like the bus bomb, or going to attack the school buses and get the little kiddies as they're bouncing off the bus. Doing all of these things, the Zodiac was a troll before trolls were a thing. Except there are real murders committed, and it did escalate things, such as the murder of Cecelia and Shepard. And real people did lose their lives. I don't mean to make light of that. I just do mean to draw attention to the fact that the Zodiac killer did spread a lot of horse shit, for lack of a better term. In short, saying things that are not true. So I would definitely think that some of the clues in the Zodiac killer mystery are just absolute duds, or they're false leads. The Zodiac is trying to get people to think about things in a particular way that are perhaps not helping the mystery. The Zodiac was planting false clues, trying to deceive people. And in all seriousness, the Zodiac killer was rather good at that. I would like to go on to another comment from that Zodiac killer upload on Lake Berryessa that we were talking about here. And this is a shout out to Dan S., who writes, "People dress in costumes, in my opinion, for a few things. Number 1, cosplay. Number 2, theater acting in movies. Number 3, holidays. And number 4, disguises. I still believe the Zodiac filmed this murder, or another individual filmed it for him. He was apparently into movies after all. Or it could have simply been a disguise that he fashioned the symbol in case the victim survived. Then you would really have to wonder that he must have had past experiences where the victim survived, which he did. Also, I have wondered that maybe the dark pleated pants that witnesses described were not his personal pants that he purchased, but was actually part of a work uniform, maybe for a company like Ameripride that cleaned and repaired clothing. Just a thought. We have a whole lot of material in that thing. We could do 20 solid minutes just on Dan's comment right here. Number 1, though, about the victim surviving. Back in 2019, I really like to talk about this a lot. I was like, okay, we had 2 victims at Blue Rock Springs, right? Mike Mageau and Darlene Ferrin. And Mike Mageau survived the Blue Rock Springs shooting, and the Zodiac wasn't wearing a hood then. So my first instinct was, oh, well, I mean, one of the victims survived in the past, so he was wearing the hood just to make sure that in case anybody survived, which Brian Hartnell did, that he would not be recognized again. And also, because Lake Berryessa was in the daylight, I absolutely 100% believe that that was a factor in wearing the hood. I don't really think the Zodiac would have worn that costume if he were going out at night, unless it really was about acting out a fantasy or creating this 4-act murderous play coming to life, and that actually would mean that the Zodiac is much crazier than he would be leading on. We also have a few other explanations that were provided. Thomas Henry Horan, whom perhaps we'll talk about later this week, if we do another open discussion on the Zodiac hoax theory. He talks about the myth of the Zodiac killer, the great Zodiac killer hoax, saying different people committed all the murders. His suspect in the Lake Berryessa stabbing and the murder of Cecelia and Shepard is an individual named Dennis Land, who was the park ranger at Lake Berryessa. And the reason why he's wearing this hood is because he is going to commit the murders, and then he's going to leave and go somewhere else and destroy evidence, as well as clean up all the blood that would be on him from stabbing these people. And then he would have come back and found Brian Hartnell and Cecelia and Shepard. The thing about that is, a lot of you guys have been leaving a lot of comments about that, and a lot of people are just saying the very simple thing. How would this guy have a conversation with Brian and Cecelia and be the first person on site and people wouldn't recognize his voice? He must have been majorly disguising his voice if that were the case. The other thing that they're saying is Cecelia and Shepard saw the Zodiac killer walking without the hood on, but wouldn't she have recognized some sort of feature? Now, if I understand how this worked is, the Zodiac also had to walk 200 to 300 yards to the Lake Berryessa crime scene from where he was originally coming from. And when I first heard about that, I thought that that can't possibly be true. It must be 200 to 300 feet. Because you think about 200 yards, that's 2 football fields. You walk across 2 football fields, how long does that take you? I mean, like, it's a rather lengthy distance to walk. But so I believe that when she saw the Zodiac killer without the hood on, she was from a very far away distance, and she could only tell that he was a Caucasian or that perhaps he had dark brown hair. But this will lead us to some other things, because we talked about Dennis Land. Let's also talk about another Zodiac killer suspect named Arthur Lee Allen. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to the Zodcast yet, Zodcast, which is hosted by Drew Beeson, I highly recommend you check out that channel, because what I think that Drew does so well on the Zodcast is he talks about how the physical descriptions of the Zodiac killer suspects are very relevant to eliminating somebody or including them in a particular discussion. For example, like if you're going to have somebody walking 200 to 300 yards, if you're going to look at Arthur Lee Allen, Arthur Lee Allen had gout in his feet. He had very bad feet. He was even reported by Don Chaney to only wear tennis shoes because he had problems with his feet. He also perhaps walked with a slight limp. Would he really be the type that's going to walk 200 or 300 yards to a crime scene wearing wing walker boots, nonetheless, the kind of boots that an Air Force person would wear on the side of an airplane, wing walker boots, and those were the prints that were left at Lake Berryessa. And Robert Graysmith tried to explore some of this, always creating some sort of explanation about how this could be Arthur Lee Allen. What Graysmith would say is that, oh, well, yeah, Arthur Lee Allen was wearing tennis shoes, but what he did was he cut off boot soles and then glued them to the bottom of the tennis shoe so that no one would figure it out. And, oh, yeah, Arthur Lee Allen didn't really have a head of dark brown hair. He was balding, so he must have been wearing a wig at Lake Berryessa underneath the Zodiac killer hood. Graysmith always has this answer for everything, and we're going to talk more about him if we do a future upload on the Zodiac killer hoax, and then some of the things that people are saying about him. And because the reason why the books are called The Myth of the Zodiac Killer and The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax are twofold. One is that someone is taking credit for murders that they didn't commit in theory, and the other reason is because Graysmith spread some disinfo when he was talking about this in his 1986 book Zodiac, as well as in Zodiac Unmasked and in interviews. And lots of people have called Graysmith out about this. It's not only Thomas Henry Horan. Michael Butterfield was featured extensively in the documentary Graysmith Unmasked, Robert Graysmith Unmasked. We did an upload about that here on this channel. If anyone would like to hear more about other criticisms of Robert Graysmith and his 1986 book Zodiac. But the point is, Arthur Lee Allen is most likely eliminated not only because of DNA and fingerprints, but also physical descriptions and just the improbable nature of him committing the crime. And the other thing is, I have to go back to Breanne Clark, the YouTuber, who was simply saying Arthur Lee Allen was a pedophile that targeted boys. Where on earth is the evidence that the Zodiac killer was a pedophile that targeted boys? And she's saying this about the Santa Rosa hitchhiker slayings, but it's the same thing with the Zodiac killer. Where is the evidence that the Zodiac was a pedophile that targeted boys? I don't see anything to support that. If anything, you could say that, make a fair case that the Zodiac killer was a lady killer. He's targeting lovers' lanes or couples out of jealousy or insecurity, mother issues, something to that effect. But in the first two incidents of the summer, where we have Blue Rock Springs and we also have Lake Berryessa, Brian Hartnell at Lake Berryessa and Mike Mageau at Blue Rock Springs survive. And then the Zodiac killer is thinking perhaps maybe people are spreading this image about me that I'm only good at killing women. So then he killed Paul Stine to prove that he could kill another man after David Faraday, of course, or just to show that it's not only about killing women. There could be numerous motivations for that. And we'll talk more about that on October 11th, closer to the Paul Stine anniversary, the anniversary of Paul Stine's death. So with this one here, I think that the most important thing that we should remember is that at Lake Berryessa, we have all the differences going on. Wearing the hood, walking 300 yards to the crime scene, committing the crime in the daylight, writing a message on the car door, wearing the Zodiac symbol. And even if the Zodiac killer didn't say, hey, I'm the Zodiac, he wore the circle with the cross going through it, wrote the crimes on the car door, using a knife instead of a handgun. When he had the handgun present, he could have shot them so easily. One bullet to the back of the head, and both of them would have died. So many differences at Lake Berryessa. It's a very confusing crime, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people believe that the Lake Berryessa stabbing was, even if there was a real Zodiac killer and it's not the hoax theory, you're dealing with two perpetrators. That's the stuff that I more talked about in 2019 when I was like, it is horribly abnormal for a serial killer to switch from sneaking up on people, firing some gunshots and running away in the dark, to wearing a hood during the daylight, stabbing people, and having this long, drawn-out conversation. There's so many differences in all the Zodiac crimes, and that's one of the reasons that this pulls people into the mystery. But the only other thing that I would like to say in conclusion is more or less asking the question, why do you believe that Lake Berryessa is so different? What do you think is the motivation for this? One of the possibilities is that this was just the only time that the Zodiac killer could have gotten away. He was, no matter who he was a person living an ordinary life. And especially if he was somebody who's working a 9-to-5 job and people were going to be wondering where he was, perhaps it was just the only time that he could get away to commit this murder, or as well as just choosing a date or a weekend when people were not watching him, but he needed to be back before sundown, or maybe it was Dennis Land. I mean, there's so many differences with Lake Berryessa, but what do you think is the reason for all of these crimes and all these differences in the crimes? But in conclusion, we should say rest in peace to Cecelia and Shepard. It's been 51 years since the attack that ended her life, and she would go on to pass away 2 days later in the hospital, suffering from her injuries. Rest in peace to Cecelia, and hopefully one day we will have more answers in the Zodiac Killer mystery. Until next time.